Inravio.com.
Hello again, everybody. This is Joe Larson, and you're watching the 5 Off, 5 On Racing Show. Welcome. Welcome to another night of race talk. And I'll tell you what, about a month or so ago, we were talking about entitlement sponsors in the Sprint Cup Series in NASCAR. And I had mentioned that Monster Energy Drink would possibly be one of the contenders, or at least pick up part of the season. And, I don't know, people thought I was crazy. Well, last Thursday, NASCAR officials and Monster announced a multi-year agreement that will see Monster become the entitlement sponsor of the NASCAR Premier Series beginning in 2017. Monster will become just the third entitlement sponsor for NASCAR's top series, following Sprint, Nextel, after 13 years, and R.J. Reynolds with its Winston brand from 1971 to 2003. Monster has been involved in Formula One racing, rally racing, and motocross among its various motorsports endeavors. The brand currently sponsors Kurt Busch's number 41 and Kyle Busch with an associate deal in the Xfinity Series. Those deals with those teams will continue. I know social media was bashing NASCAR that they stole team sponsors. That will not happen. They will continue on. In fact, Busch just signed a multi-year agreement with Monster to stay on board. So, you know, it's similar to back when Adam Petty, the late Adam Petty, the grandson of Richard Petty and son of Kyle, they brought Sprint in. It was the Nextel series. This was before the merger. Sprint took over Nextel. They still continued to sponsor Kyle Petty. They didn't pull out. There's agreements. They don't just back out of it. You have a signed deal, you go with it. Monster Energy Drink, in my opinion, is going to be a good partner for NASCAR. Its fans, its teams. Monster Energy Drink, the brand Monster Energy Drink, anyway, is a big staple amongst the younger crowd, the younger people. The older folks, you already got us. We're in, we're not going anywhere, but they're trying to get the new fan. And Monster Energy Drink is perfect for this setup. It'd be interesting to see what they call it right now. It's not going to, they haven't said they're going to call it the Cup. They're just calling it the Monster Energy Drink Series for now. I'm sure that they're still hammering out those names and those issues and what the logo is going to actually look like. But right now it's Monster. And I think that's a good thing. It was kind of concerning how NASCAR, the season ended and still didn't have an entitlement sponsor for the following season. And when you look at some of the behind the scenes things, Brian France, this was the only sales pitch that Brian France went to along with the marketing people. It was that important to him to bring in Monster. And I think part of that was no other corporation was in a position to put up the money that Monster has put up, which has, from my knowledge, has not been disclosed yet, because it's a lot of money. Like, nobody knew how much Sprint put up, or Nextel went anywhere, or R.J. Reynolds, other than, point fund monies. But this is going to be big for NASCAR, and I hope it's one of those things that lasts a while. To have to chase down a new entitlement sponsor for the largest series in one of the largest sanctioned bodies in auto racing, it's kind of disheartening. When I was hearing, nobody wanted to take it. Nobody wanted to take the full year. It was too much money. And with this deal, of course, Monster becomes the official energy drink of NASCAR, which in itself is big. I know when I was involved with UPS and they did the NASCAR deal, a lot of non-racing enthusiasts, I should say, at UPS thought it was the stupidest, dumbest move that we could have made as a corporation. And when you look back on that, it was a big endeavor. UPS didn't really advertise. They had some commercials, you know, but very small, very regional things. When they got involved with NASCAR, it was who's going to race the truck. Let's race the truck. Well, they'll race the truck, and that brand all of a sudden was more well known, and UPS became the express carrier of NASCAR at the time, and everything that NASCAR shipped and sent had to go UPS unless it was a first class letter. And UPS made a lot of money on that deal, and I'm sure Monster Energy Drink is going to be looking at the same type of return. Remember, return on investment when you're a sponsor, you don't just throw money away. And a lot of people think that, hey, that guy has money, let him sponsor my car. It doesn't work that way. What has to happen is NASCAR had to sell Monster and why this was a good thing for Monster. And when they did that, Monster said, this is a no-brainer. Between merchandising, the product. Now, I'm sure, you know, it's been a while since I've been an official, and we drank a lot of Powerade and a lot of Coca-Cola products, and I'm sure that's still going to be a part of it. But now I'm sure when the beverage cart comes to the NASCAR hauler on the weekends, there's going to be a lot of Monster and a lot of Monster Energy drinks. So I think that's a great thing for NASCAR. And the teams are excited about it, and you know, you don't really get to see that kind of excitement about an entitlement sponsor. You didn't see this when Nextel came in and then when they became Sprint. You didn't see that excitement. You saw it with R.J. Reynolds because all of a sudden the purses went up, the point funds went up, and all of a sudden, you know, you didn't have all of this, all of this excitement back then as you do now. And Monster did not use FedEx to send the proposal 22 figure, and that's a quick story about that for those who don't know. When UPS was finally going to get into this, they searched and hunted, and they found who they thought was an up-and-comer to drive for them, Buckshot Jones. And it was a done deal. I don't know what the dollar amount was at the time for Buckshot, but there's a clause in all of these deals, and any actions detrimental to the corporation, in this case UPS, would make the contract null and void. So UPS signed, sent it on to Buckshot. Buckshot bosses, owners, whatever, signed, and they sent it back FedEx. The UPS took that as a personal slap in the face and canceled the deal right then and there. Believe it or not. That's one of those things in the Ripley story. And then Robert Yates and Ford got involved, and boom, the rest was history. But it was a good deal for Monster. It's a good deal for NASCAR. And like I said, it was something that was needed, an entitlement sponsor that's going to take the whole series for multi-years. How many years that is, I'm not sure at this point. I'm sure the details of that will come out shortly. But it's all good. And I'm excited. And I don't get excited about things like this, but I'm excited, you know, especially at the fact that I was talking to some Monster executives behind the scenes about a month or a month and a half or so ago, and we talked about it, and the guy was saying, are you involved with NASCAR? You know, I'm going to do my rep. I said, yeah, and not that he had any input or I had any input, but we talked about it, and I said, I'll tell you what, this would be perfect. You know, Coca-Cola is a fine organization, already the official soft drink in NASCAR. I don't think Coca-Cola coming in as an entitlement sponsor would have had as big of an impact as Monster. Coca-Cola's already there. And I'm not thinking the Coke Cup sounds like something that you want to win. Maybe you do, I don't know. But I wish everybody well on this. This is exciting times at NASCAR. And now if Monster could engage the fans to start coming back to the races, I would love to be at Speed Weeks to see what Monster's going to do to entice these people and what they're going to give away and what they're going to have you try and sample and some of the gear that they're going to have come out. So good luck to Monster. Good luck to NASCAR in 2017 and beyond. This is real good. This is real good. And sponsorship is tough to come by these days. And money's tight. You know, it's not like in the old days. Money is tight. And you know, when people sit around the board table and they look at their budgets for next year, one of the things that they look at is their advertising budget. And then they look at their payroll, and they look at supplies and rents, utilities and taxes and all that kind of nonsense. And certain things you can't cut. Your rent, your utilities, your payroll. It's tough to cut payroll. You know, you don't take money away from people. So what's the first thing that gets cut is advertising. The advertising budget is the first thing that gets cut in most places where you need to cut money. We need to find another 5%. Well, let's take it out of advertising. Because the guys on the board, they're not going to take a smaller paycheck. You can't go to your people and say, listen, I'm going to give you $1 less an hour. I mean, you could, but you'd have disgruntled employees. But to go there and look and see what goes on at some of these meetings that involve sponsorships, and I know I've been involved in a lot of them over the years, and the first thing when you feel like it's slipping away, they say, well, you know, last year we thought we were going to do this and we didn't, and we have to cut our budget, and the first thing they want to cut is advertising. So it's good to see a company as solvent as Monster, through its parent company, is going to be on board. So anyway, it's a good deal. And we're going to take a break, and we come back. We're going to talk about a F1 driver, Formula One driver, who is retiring at the ripe old age of 31 when we come back.
Hey, this is Chris Jake, and if Inravio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Village Music Shop of Mastic, 1-800-HEY-DUDE, your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Welcome back. In a shocking announcement, Formula One driver and 2016 champion of the Formula One Series, Nico Rosberg, announced his retirement at the ripe old age of 31. No reasoning was given other than the family deal. And I got to say that here's a guy making a lot of money, made a lot more money winning a championship, is going to retire at that young age. And a lot of Formula One drivers, they go on for a lot of years and go on and on. And I got to wonder, what's more behind that scene? Now, when you look at the auto racing industry, whether it's Formula One, NASCAR, dirt, whatever it may be, when you look at that, it's not like professional baseball where you have a 20-year window, or professional football where you have an 8-year window, or even a 5-year window maybe. Hockey players, you know, they don't go 20 years either. Some do, there's an exception to every rule. But auto racing, as long as you're in decent shape and your reflexes are still good, you could race well into your 50s. I mean, some guys go on a little too long and need to get out. Maybe, you know, they're past their prime. Some guys that are young that don't do very well need to get out. But when I look at a guy who's 31, maybe he's like, I have nothing left to prove. I don't know. Kind of shocked about that. I really am, because Nico Rosberg, he's an excellent, talented driver in the Formula One Series. I don't know if he's going to go on to another series or a type of other racing, or he's just going to settle down and take the money that he put in the bank all these years, you know, racing and whatever other investments he had, and enjoy the rest of his life. That's a long time to just sit back. Or maybe he's going to buy a team. It hasn't come out yet, and I know when it does, if it does, I think we'll all be respectful of Nico Rosberg's decision to stop racing. And those of us, even those of us that raced in the weekly racing series in our local home tracks, you know, think about, you know, scheduling. Now, the Formula One, they don't race every week, and I don't know how they could, because they race all over the world. But, you know, think about some of us who raced in an era where you raced every Saturday night from April through September. You missed a lot of stuff You missed the weddings in the family, the christenings. You missed the births of children. You missed things that you can't get back. But we're so wrapped up into it, we gotta go racing, gotta go racing. And then the schedules in a lot of the tracks across the country in the weekly series started to change. We got a lot of divisions here. We want to give everybody a good opportunity. Maybe you'll race 3 weeks, be off one, race 2 weeks, be off one. And the schedules started to change. And I think, in my opinion, that kind of hurt weekly racing. And here's why. A lot of people are going to say, what are you, crazy? That's a good thing. No, I don't think so. Because a couple of things happen, and from both sides of the spectrum, from the promoter side and from the competitor side. When the promoter starts scheduling you off, you're a racer, you want to go racing. Let's say you have a tour type modified, and your track gives you off. Well, I'm going to go race. Oh, there's a race that I could race at this place, and it's not too far. I could go to this track. I can go to that track. Or if you have a car that, with a couple of tweaks and changes, you can go race at other racetracks as well. This is what happens, in my opinion. You go to these other tracks, and you get treated differently. Not because that track's any different than the one that you race at normally. You get treated different because you're the new guy. You see, and if I'm a promoter or if I'm a head official and a new guy comes to my track from somewhere else, I'm going to welcome him with open arms. I'm going to tell him what he needs to do, or she, what they need to do, and how to do it, and make them feel welcomed. And if they don't come back a week or two later, give them a call. Hey, my local track. Oh, okay, when are you going to be back? Make them feel wanted. And I know Mike Mortimer, a good friend of mine for many, many years, races a late model, or raced a late model here on Long Island. Went up to Seekonk, Massachusetts with his late model, and he raced there a couple of weeks, and he missed a couple of weeks, and they called him. And he said, my local track doesn't do that. And he had been a supporter of his local track for years and years and years. And in his opinion, that the racing was better. He wasn't fixing damaged parts. The drivers were held accountable for their actions on the racetrack. And because of that, guys knew not to dump people, not to wreck people, and not to tear up equipment. And here's a guy that had nights off, and he goes, wait, I have a race car. I got sponsors. I'm going to go racing. And he's just one of many that have done that over the years who, when they have a night off, they want to go racing. Yeah, there's a few people that they look forward to that night off of racing. They look forward to it. They could plan something. They can go to the beach or go on a picnic or go visit family, well, whatever the case may be. And when you drill right down to that, situation, what you find is here's a team that possibly, man, that's not like they want to go visit family. They could save XYZ number of dollars by not bringing the race car out. A set of tires, fuel, pit fees, transportation to and from. And I said this many years ago while I was on the Whelen Modified Tour, when the schedule went from like 23, 24, 26 races to 16. I remember sitting in a meeting and I says, with a schedule like this, we're going to lose people. And it came back at me that, the cost of racing is expensive and blah, blah, blah. And I said, at this meeting, I said, a racer wants to race. They don't care what the purse is. They don't care what track it's at. They want to go racing. And when they go to these other places, they're taking away money and stuff from their regular series, like the Whelen Modified Tour. And they went from, like I said, the 25, 26 races, whatever it was, 15 years ago, to now, 15. Throwing a rain out or two, and you have 13. You have a 26-week season, theoretically, April through October, and you're only racing like 13 of them, with the rainouts that can't be rescheduled. Think about that, you're a racer. You just spent $100,000 on a race car, a modified. You didn't spend $100,000 on a race car to sit on jack stands in your shop. You go racing. And all of a sudden, these teams started going to other series, especially some of the, and I hate to use this term, but let's change this term from back market to guys who didn't run up front regularly. All of a sudden, they have a shot now in these other series to be competitive. And then a lot of it's always when there's a new series or a new division, it's always the non or less competitive teams that go into that. So they have decent car counts. and the series they came out of maybe starts to dwindle away. And I can remember going to the World Series at the Thompson Motorsports Park a couple of years ago under the tutelage of Chad Little. And we had the Whalen garage area that they always had, and then they had way in the far end behind the hill, over by the hill, if you've ever been to Thompson, you go and you saw that they had the Valente modified racing series there. So I was asked to go count the cars. Just walk through there and count the cars. So I did. I had a little clicker. As I walked by, I'm clicking them, clicking them, clicking them. And they had like, I don't know, 45, 50 cars. And the Whalen tour only had like 30. So not only did I go back with the count, but I went back with the names of the guys and the gals who used to race the modified series. And I said, well, you know, I got bad news. I got even worse news. Chad goes, what? I said, there's 45 cars back there. He goes, what? I said, there's 45 cars back there. I said, want to know what's really worse? He goes, what? 25 of them used to be on our series. And they didn't think it was a big deal. And I know Ed Cox, a fine Southern gentleman, was the Whelen Modified Tour Series director when I first came on board. He said to the teams, and he told them at a meeting, guys, if you keep running these other series that don't pay as well, the payoffs are going to go down in our series because you're showing the promoters you'll race for less. And they all laughed. No, we're the tour. Well, guess what? They're racing for less. They're racing for less money now than they did 10 years ago. And the cost of the car has escalated threefold since 10 years ago. The tire bill now, they used to get free tires in the modified tour. They don't get that anymore. And you look back and like, they did it to themselves. If they would have stayed close to each other and if they would have been loyal, the modified tour, the Whelen modified tour, would still have their 45 and 50 car counts. And I know some people argue with me, but they didn't. And I can remember races in 2002, 3, and 4, where we sent more cars home than that started the race. And you could go look that up because I thought it was incredible. And where the difference between pole and home sometimes was 0.2 of a second. Now it's 2 to 3 seconds because everybody's in, because nobody's going home. Maybe 1, maybe 2. So, you know, when you think about that, that's something that needs to be looked at. But again, you know, people don't want to race every week. I think that's hogwash. You have a race car, you want to race every week. And there's a lot of series out there that pay a lot of money and pay better. But, you know, the other thing you want to look at, too, is you want to find out what kind of insurance they have in case you get hurt. You get hurt in a race car, and I know before New Smyrna became NASCAR, there was a sign, when you signed into a big sign that said, racing is dangerous, if you get hurt, you're on your own. But, you know, we're all in there signing up, let's go, we don't sign up. And I'll tell you what, and I got injured in a race car, and it was pretty expensive. And my bills were well over $250,000. And between my insurance company and NASCAR, I didn't pay anything, not a dime, not a penny, not a penny. I don't know if there was an injury in some of these other series, you know, what kind of insurance would be paid out or would it be capped out? I know my daughter got hurt in the WKA. It capped out at like a low amount. She had over $100,000 worth of bills, and it capped out. No, you're only going to get, you know, XYZ dollars, you know, and I don't know, you know. And 22 figure 8, he puts the nail right on the head. You know, racers can't limit themselves. Look at the figure 8s here on Long Island. They were basically junkyard cars. When I started, it was. And now they're late models. And I can remember I bought my first figure 8 car, complete, rolling, ready to go. I went to the guy's house, picked it up, and went racing that day for $750. Now, I couldn't get a set of tires for $750 to go figure 8 racing on Long Island because they are like late models now. The motors are incredibly expensive if you want to compete. And, you know, there aren't too many homemade chassis, home-built chassis anymore. People are buying chassis. You go into the parts guy and you're buying a body, and they look like late models. And they're gorgeous-looking cars. Figure 8. People think they're old jalopies that just you want to go wrecking. No, people need to go to a figure 8. So I'll tell you what, and because figure 8 drivers, in my opinion, are very talented. You're thinking all the time, and not to take anything away from oval track drivers or drag strip drivers, but you're constantly thinking. Your eyes are constantly moving. You don't have that 3, 4, 5 seconds to go down a straightaway and just go. Because the straightaway is short, the turns are wide, and you're thinking intersection. But, 22 figure 8 hit the nail right on the head. It's very expensive to run a figure 8 car. Not only here on Long Island, but in other places, I've seen some wacky, tricked out figure 8 cars. It's just incredible. But anyway, hopefully this trend will change, and people will just start to go and see how that goes. And like Need for Speed, saying blunderbuss cars, again, they're talking about Long Island. They're like the figure 8 cars of years ago. And, but unfortunately, they got out of control as well. Now, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about who won the most popular driver in the Sprint Cup Series again when we come back.
Hi, my name is Aaron from Real Big Fish.
And I'm Ed from Real Big Fish.
And you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Hey, I'm Raul Panther.
And I'm Commander B. Hawkins.
And I'm Mark Well. We're some of the proto men. If we see you without this bracelet, you're punching the. But if you have this bracelet from Inravio.com, you can win $100.
Put one of these on, or else.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE, your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Well, Sprint Cup Series had their awards banquet last Saturday night, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. won the National Motorsports Press Association's Sprint Cup Series Most Popular Driver, even though he missed half the season. This is Dale Jr.'s 14th consecutive Motorsports Press Association award as voted by the fans. Bill Elliott won the award 16 times between 1984 and 2002. Now, I know a lot of people, through the social media, when Melissa Fifield and the Whalen Modified Tour won the Most Popular Driver award, and it's based on people voting. Melissa Fifield went to her network of friends and family and had them vote. And it's one of those things, vote early, vote often, and you can do that legally. Because it's just you go online and you vote. That's how it works. Dale Earnhardt Jr., very popular. 14 consecutive years, the most popular driver. Again, it's a marketing thing. It's a networking thing. You get your friends, your family, your people that anybody could do it. Anybody could do it. And I'll tell you what, it is a popularity contest with your fans. And I always wondered, why couldn't they do it like they do with Dancing with the Stars? There's the call-in vote and there's the judges. Why couldn't it be, and I say this, why couldn't the Most Popular Driver Award be a combination of the fans voting online and the people holding a license in that series get to vote one time? And you can't vote for a person that you work for or yourself. All right? And that's 22 figure 8. So that's okay for Dale because Kyle Busch raced half a season and won a championship. It is what it is. And going back, Tracy Trico, a good fan of ours, was saying as far as insurance goes, and she's operated a track and now she's a promoter. Her son, there's a cap of $500,000, and then they have coverage, what it costs. You get your own insurance. And I'm glad, Tracy, thanks for sharing that. But, you know, why leave it up to the track, as Tracy says? Why not cover your own self? You know, NASCAR's deal is really good. Trust me. And I'll never knock them for what they did. The only restrictions I had was I could not compete while they were paying the bills. And that's a mistake some people make when they get injured. Because, oh, they got a race, they got a cast on, they got the, you know, their foot's all wired up. I know one guy, he had an Achilles tendon rupture. He operated the clutch with a string, or the gas pedal with a string or wire. You know, once you hop back into the race car, your benefits with NASCAR stop. But getting back to the most popular driver, I really feel that the people who know the person should have a vote as well, and they do under the fan vote thing. But then they should combine. They should combine that. Let's take a serious look at that. Not that Dale Earnhardt Jr. doesn't deserve this award, or Melissa Fifield. They did what they had to do to make it happen. But I can remember my local track had a most popular driver award. Then you bought a program, you could vote. If you bought 500 programs in the course of the season, you could vote 500 times. And the last time they held it under the old ownership, they didn't like the people who won. I kid you not. And I'll talk about this offline. I won't talk about it on the air. But they didn't like the people who won. They felt it was wrong. So they canceled it. They didn't give out the awards. They told the guy who programmed Dynamics, Steve Barrick, we're not giving out the awards. Meantime, the guy goes out and buys trophies for these people, whatever. And they wouldn't let him do it. That wasn't right, because over the years, other people did the same thing. They kept buying programs or getting programs and putting the votes in. And your most popular driver. Your most popular driver because you're able to get your friends and family and fans to vote for you. And I think the issue was one driver who raced in two divisions won both awards in both divisions. And the old promoters didn't like that. They thought that it was some ballot stuffing. And well, it's just they didn't like that. And they should have just finished it up and been done with it and then canceled it out. But anyway, most popular driver. Dale Earnhardt Jr., he's a prominent force, walks around the garage area, recognizable, just like Bill Elliott was back in the day. Some other Sprint Cup Series news and the NASCAR top. Roush Fenway Racing announced last week that Liberty National, say that 3 times fast, life insurance company will sponsor the number 6 car driven by Trevor Bayne in 2017. So they're picking up some sponsorship there. But on a sad note, H. Scott Motorsports announced today it will not field any teams and is closing its doors. H. Scott owner Henry Scott Jr. stated there are no viable sponsors or drivers options available to allow the team to participate in 2017. This not only includes the Sprint Cup Series team, but the K&N Series car that they have as a development. And where in the K&N Series, they've won 4 consecutive championships. H. Scott Motorsports sold its charter. I didn't even know that they were a chartered team. And this was the team that Clint Boyer was suing for $2.2 million that he claimed he was owed for the 2016 season. That suit was settled out of court. So I'm sure he got probably 50 cents on the dollar. And Roush Fenway Racing is now down to 2 teams for 2017 in the Sprint Cup Series. As back in 2005, Jack Roush fielded 5 teams in the Sprint Cup Series. Then NASCAR instituted a cap for team size to 4 in 2010. And then that's when Roush Fenway Racing driver Matt Kenseth left in 2012 to join Joe Gibbs Racing, and they were down to 3 cars for 2013. And now with Greg Biffle leaving at the conclusion of this past season, it was announced they would only have a 2-car team. Is the day of Jack Roush or Roush Fenway Racing coming to an end? I hope not. You know, when you look back, some of the teams that are no longer with us, some were strong, some weren't. Michael Waltrip Racing never really did what they said they were going to do, I guess, win races. Robert Yates Racing. Although Robert is sick now with cancer, but Robert Yates, back in the Davey Allison days, Dale Jarrett, they had some good stuff going on. And you look at it, you know, the only strong teams that are really left and financially stable, Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, you know, Richard Childress. Is it going to come to a point where they're going to bring all the cars? There's not any, I call them independent teams left anymore. Tommy Baldwin had to close his doors, Tommy Baldwin Racing. You know, when you hear about that, NASCAR needs to take a look at why these teams folding, and it's the biggest part is sponsorship. What it costs to run a team, what it costs to have tires and run the races and get your crews. And I know some of that was done on, they did it to themselves, you know, but when you look at that, when you look at what's going on in racing in general, from the top series down to the weekly series, teams are dropping out. NASCAR realized they were having trouble filling the fields in the top 3 series. So like in the Sprint Cup series, they went from 43 starters to 40. You had to buy a charter, you know, things of that nature. And then it's just kind of scary when you see a guy like Jack Roush. We lost Kenseth, so let's just not replace him. We'll save some money. Oh, you know, Biffle's gone. All right, now we're down to 2. What happens to all of those people who are on those teams? Now, what do? They call everybody in. They call everybody in and say, all right, listen, you know, we had 3 teams, and we had 300 people. Now there's 2 teams, or 200 people. So 100 of you will not be working here. I don't know. 22 figure out Ford says Ford needs to get Roush teamed up with Penske. And I'll tell you what, that wouldn't be a bad idea, but how many partnerships can you have? Like JT Dougherty and Richard Childress Racing, there's so many teams that are together, whether it's a motor deal, whether it's fabrication deal, whether it's engineering. It's no longer like it used to be. And I guess nothing really is. Nothing really is anymore. And when you look at that, there's a lot of changes going on in NASCAR. And I'm hoping with this Monster Energy drink deal that we could give it a shot in the arm. You know, maybe the people will say, hey, whoa, Monster Energy, right? Maybe I need to start sponsoring a team. Maybe I need to get my company name out there. And I'll tell you what, the return on investment, and again, I go back to the UPS deal because I was kind of very familiar with it. UPS put up $16 million a year for Dale Jarrett to drive the UPS car under Robert Yates. And NASCAR became, UPS became NASCAR's express shipping company. There was merchandise, there was souvenirs, and for every dollar that UPS gave Robert Yates, they made $3 back. Think about that, that's a lot of money. So they put up $16 million. He made $48 million, so that's a net. That's a net of $32 million. It was a no-brainer for UPS. The name got out there. UPS wasn't big on advertising back then. The name got out there, and you know, and I remember talking to one marketing guy down in the corporate headquarters. You know, we were talking about this in one day in the conference room, and he goes, "Why would we want to entice a guy that wears dirty jeans, coveralls, and has a piece of straw sticking out of his mouth with a dirty, greasy baseball cap?" And I remember saying to the guy, I says, what you're doing, you're talking in a generalization. I said, there's people in racing, not just in NASCAR, people in racing that they're from Fortune 500 companies. They wear a suit and a tie just like you, big guy. People have money. And even that guy that's in the coveralls and the dirty jeans and the dirty baseball cap, that guy races at his weekly track. He has to buy parts, and those parts have to come somewhere. Why not ship them UPS? Don't judge a book by its cover. And we kind of got into it, me and that guy, and then he was eating crow when we announced the deal, and then he saw how much money we were making as a partner in the business as I was. And that was a good thing. And I'm kind of sad to see UPS not involved the way they are. They still sponsor races. They do some associate sponsorship work. But it's all about money. These teams cannot afford to operate. You go to any of these shops, and they're big 100,000 square foot buildings, if not bigger, on a big chunk of land, and the support staff that is needed to run that building, and then go with the team. That's a lot of people that you got to pay, and if you want to get the best people, you got to pay more. And if you don't win, and I don't mean don't win. If you don't run up front and you get your name out there and do the right thing for your sponsors, you lose them. And that's what's happening. And it'd be interesting to see how many cars show up at Daytona. I'm sure there'll be a full field, if not more. But let's see how many are still running in June, July, because they're out of money. Hopefully that all works out. All right, when we come back, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Dodge possibly returning back to the NASCAR's top series in 2017 or beyond when we come back.
Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Inravio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Inravio.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back. I'm just looking through the chat room. People are talking about tires and how to get modifieds on trailers with little tires and et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of serious chat about that. Anyway, a couple of months ago, I had mentioned that there was some teams or some manufacturers looking to come back into NASCAR possibly, and NASCAR was looking into it. And Dodge is returning to NASCAR, according to Sergio Marchionne, the CEO of FCA, which is the Fiat Chrysler America Corp., the parent company of Dodge. NASCAR has not confirmed this announcement, and in a published report published in Cupscene.com, editor Greg Engel, NASCAR reported in an email, there is increasing excitement around NASCAR. David Hitchkin, Vice President of Communications, said in an email statement, we continue to have an ongoing dialogue with a number of auto manufacturers about their interest in joining our sport. We look forward to exploring with them on this topic. Dodge officially left NASCAR in 2009. Only Penske Racing was still running a Dodge until moving to Ford in 2012. I would think if a manufacturer makes an announcement that they want to go back to NASCAR, NASCAR would open it with open arms. Get the R&D people involved, start coming up with a car or body style that's going to fit. And for some reason they're not. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I have a lot of friends in NASCAR, don't get me wrong. People I know very well, long time. Dodge left NASCAR, and the CEO of currently was the guy who pulled out. Sergio Marchionne. He pulled out. He saw no economic advantage to running his body style or spending the money on support to run NASCAR. Now you fast forward a few years, and not even a few, he wants back in. See, NASCAR is kind of funny, because once you leave, they don't want you back, unless it benefits NASCAR. NASCAR is not going to see a benefit to bring Dodge back in. Will Dodge eventually be back in NASCAR? Absolutely. I see that. Maybe not in 2017, maybe not even in 18. But Dodge will be back. NASCAR is trying to figure out who to bring in, because you have your Fords, your Chevys, and you have your Toyotas. And it used to be an American-made car. I can remember the Buicks that were running. I remember the Dodges and the Chryslers that were running years ago. Of course, your Fords, your Chevys, your Plymouths. I remember the emblem on the quarter panel of Richard Petty's car said, "Plymouth by Petty." And then you go back to even before that, the DeSoto, the Hudson, the Hornet. I mean, all these cars that ran years ago that no longer run and they're no longer made. But when you look at these cars today, other than the Xfinity series, it's hard to differentiate Ford, Chevy, Toyota. You put these cars on a racetrack in primer gray with no numbers, and then you give everybody a pad, and maybe you put letters A, B, C, D, all the way down, and then you say, what's what? You couldn't do it. The decals are what make the manufacturer. Although I was in the R&D center where they had the stock production car and the Sprint Cup Series body next to it, showing that the measurements were pretty much right on, maybe an inch or so off here, an inch or so off there, and the lines were the same. But for the most part, you can't tell the difference anymore. But anyway, with Dodge wanting to come back in, I'm sure Dodge is looking to put a car, because it has to be a stock production car in the street. I don't know of any Dodge cars other than maybe the Magnum, if they still make that. I'm not a Dodge person, but I don't see that happening really quick or really anytime soon. But Sergio Marchionne he drew a line in the sand. Hey, NASCAR, I want to come back, because he's tired of seeing Chevy tear up everything, winning all these races and these championships. And I'm sure he feels he could put a competitive car back on the racetrack again, because Dodge was always competitive back in the day. And what happens with these manufacturers, once their involvement stops, it's hard for the teams to do their R&D. It's hard for the teams to develop, and they got to work with what they have. And when Dodge pulled out, and Penske was the last man standing running a Dodge, and then he finally switched to Ford. So it should be interesting how that pans out. And speaking of, how this is going to all pan out and what has to happen, and NASCAR's going to take time to bring, body styles down to the R&D center and do their testing and whatnot. You look at rules. Now, rules are a big thing in racing, and I've always said that. And I can remember the late Bobby Lane. He was one of the great Long Island drivers. He drove about everything that was to race here on Long Island between the three racetracks. I had the opportunity to be a head official when Bobby Lane was still involved. And I can remember him and I talking. And we're talking about rules. And he was one of the guys who looked at a rule and could figure out in seconds how to beat it. And I'm going to share an old story, right? An old figure eight car. The rule said the rear springs, you could cut, how did it go? I'm going to get it right. You could bobtail. Figure eight cars, they used to cut the back ends off of the cars. And some of these guys, they cut so much off, it didn't even look like a car at that point. So they made a rule. You can only cut back to the rear spring mounts. So Bobby Lane shows up with a car. The rear bumper is under the back window. They say, didn't you read the rules? He goes, yeah. I could cut it back to the rear spring mounts. Well, that's not what, he goes, I got a coilover car. So they had to go write another rule to fix that. They had to write another rule. And they made a rule. The engine had to mount in the stock position. He shows up with a Corvair rear engine car. The engine was in the front, and he had his motor set all the way back. You can't have the setback. The number 2 spark plug has to line up ball joint, stock mount position. Because you want to put my car in the back, motor in the back. Guys like that, and we'd read the rule, and you look at a rule book or page or a section and say, how many lines are there? Oh, there's 24. I see 48. You got to read between the lines. And I know a lot of racetracks try to do their rules like during the season, so track or drivers know over the winter what they need to fix or change or modify. And it's a little disheartening to me. I'm seeing a lot of stuff on social media that people are begging for rules and they're still not out. It's the first of the year is in a couple of weeks. And I'm not just talking about the local racetrack here in Long Island. I'm talking about a lot of racetracks as I look at that stuff. And some of these things have to be fabricated. Some of these things have to be ordered and made to fit and whatnot. And I always felt that the rules should be available at season end. I didn't always have that capability when I was doing rules with my staff because the promoters didn't think we needed to do that. And every once in a while you see out of the corner of your eye something in the chat room that makes you crack up. And 22 figure 8 reminded me of a stock clutch rule. And he knows the story. I don't know if anybody that's watching or listening or chatting knows it. Mid-season, I'm racing figure 8s at Riverhead Raceway. I just bought a very expensive, like 5.5-inch clutch. I raced it like twice. And I pull into the racetrack, and the head official and the tech inspector come down to my car, and they hand me an addendum that I failed to pick up when I signed in, that effective, like, that night, you had to have a stock clutch press plate flywheel that weighed 32.5 pounds with the nuts and bolts. But because whoever didn't have that had to add 200 pounds for the night, which was another whole debacle, trying to find 200 pounds in the racetrack when you have like 25 other people doing the same thing. So I put the weight on. I don't even know how. I think I put stuff in the trunk, whatever. And we go back to my shop, and we're sitting there, and we're trying to figure out how to do this. Nowhere in the rule did it say it had to be functioning. It just said you had to have one. All right. So I went to the junkyard, or Roger Main, I think, had one. We bolted it on, 32.5 pounds, kept the quartermaster in there. We weren't racing. Oh, yeah. Oh, Kevin, go to the firehouse. So anyway, it's just one of those things. And like Tracy's saying, it takes a lot of work behind the scenes just to open every week, let alone go get a breather to do rules. And I know that's hard to do. And I say the only rules that should be done mid-season are for safety, and if somebody has a competitive advantage that you've found. That's when you do that. That's when you make a rule change mid-season. But other than that, have a rules committee, have key guys from each division come talk. Don't let them price themselves out of racing. But you know what? Let the drivers and the owners have an input. Let them have input. Because they're the guys spending the money, and it's not like, especially from the touring series on down, it's not like the top 3 series where they have $1 million budgets. Some of these guys are racing week to week, and what you have is, we make a rule change. I can remember rules that the cost was like incredible, and put some guys out of racing, and yeah, you have stuff like that, and. You got to work with the teams. And I think that's another reason why a lot of these teams from the touring series on down, they just can't afford to keep up with the rule changes. Lock into a rule. And like I said, unless there's a competitive advantage or a safety issue, let's stick with what we got. Unless, of course, you have a new division that you started out, and you're always tweaking. You're always going back and forth. You're always trying to find a way as a competitor to beat the next guy, and the officials are trying to find a way to hone it all in. Just like, you take a race car that was called the street stock, now you call it a late model. You just double the price of the parts. It was just one of those things. And when you look back at rules, it's not an easy thing to do. And I was just thumbing through on the website, scrolling through some of the rules at racetracks, and I came across, I know we got to wrap up soon, but I came across a rule that said all window glass must be removed. I don't know anybody that goes to the junkyard and buys a car and guts it and makes a race car except for enduro drivers. Or maybe, when you have the blunderbuss guys here on Long Island. But, if you got to tell a race car driver to remove the glass in the rules, that guy's in the wrong business. There was another rule that I looked at in one track. It said the headliner must be removed from the roof of the car. Nobody's using those types of things no more. Nobody's using those types of things. When you look at that. And, when it says, the bumpers must be mounted at stock bumper height. I don't know anybody that does that. And where especially on today's cars, where is the bumper? Where is it? Where is the bumper? You have a bumper cover, so where is the bumper? Things of that nature when I look at stuff like that, but I don't know. It's one of my little pet peeves when it comes to rules. And there's a rule that says on page 5, you could do this. You must do this. And then you go to page 11, and it says you could never do this. I don't know how those things happen. Well, anyway, we're going to take a break here. We're going to wrap it up here. Wow, I'm having so much fun talking about rules. We're going to wrap it up here. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your schedules to come watch and participate in the show tonight. Even the people that are here trying to buy parts on my show and look for sponsors. We don't do that here. Do that offline. And wherever your endeavors are going to take you this weekend and during the week, please be safe. Please be careful. Give somebody a hug. Tell them you love them. God bless you all. And we'll see you next Monday night. Thank you.